In this review, we're going to dive into The Crew Mission Deep Sea. This is a retheming of a 2019 darling in the board game world, The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9. The original one was loved by many, except for me. I didn't really enjoy it too much. But as we can see with this new version, some small changes can make a big difference. So if you've played the original Crew game, the one that takes place in space, this is pretty much exactly the same thing, so you can skip past the explanation. If you haven't, don't worry, the complexity does not come in the rules. The basic mechanic of this game will be trick-taking. That is the process of playing cards that have different values and suits, or colors, as you can see here. And when playing one, whoever played the card of the highest value that also matches the color of the first card gains that trick. Now, in other games, when it's a bit more competitive, that's usually how you score points. This one is cooperative. The way it works is you're going to get a number of these task cards. Now, depending on player count and also difficulty of the mission, you'll reveal that many cards. So let's say we had a difficulty of 5. There's a 2. There's a 1 for 3 players. This one is 3, so we're going to skip that. That would go over. There's another 2 for 3 players. So we'll just put that, flip them over, and then you're going to decide who gains which task. Now, they will have a variety, as you can see here, winning certain cards, not winning certain cards, trying to get specific tricks. So you'll have to keep an eye on that. You will have access to your hand first, so you'll know how likely it would be for you to complete these tasks. You have to accept one. You can only pass if someone else can pick it up later. So for right now, everyone's going to have to take one. If, for example, there were only 2, then this person could possibly skip to give it to the next person if they didn't feel comfortable. Once you have assigned all the tasks, you will keep playing till A, it is obvious that someone can't win. So, for example, if this player won one of those 2 cards, you know that's an automatic loss. Or you play to the end and certain tasks may require you to see if you win more green cards than pink cards, which would need to see it, you reach the end to make sure you keep that status quo. Once you've done so, there is a little quest log, and this is what you can go through to find harder missions, or you can just play another game in which you choose maybe a higher difficulty setting. Because player count can matter, as well as, of course, the cards on there, you could have a whole variety of missions depending on your number. You could have a whole bunch because you have a lot of easy missions, or maybe just from this deck, you could have some more difficult ones, meaning you only have 2 missions to complete, but they're very challenging and will require some coordination. Speaking of coordination, that is the one other big thing for the crew you have to know. You cannot communicate or talk about your cards. This is very much meant to be technically silent, but point is you're not supposed to say what you have. The only way you can communicate is once per game. You have this little fun card here, and you may show one card from your hand. So let's say I chose this 5 and put it out onto the field. Now, you then place this token in one of 3 spots. If it's at the top, that means, I guess I'll actually flip this over. This is your highest pink value card currently when you played the clue. That means you have other ones, but they're lower. If it's at the bottom, it's the opposite. It's your lowest pink value card, but you have others. If you place in the center, it's your only one of that suit/color. So this is a great way to let someone really know if you need to make sure, like, if you need to win this card, I have this, so you need to find a way around it, or I can definitely win something, or this is the best I've got. But other than that, there is no talking. You have to try to play your cards, read how your opponents are playing their own cards, or at the very least, complete the goals that can be completed earlier on. And that is the basic gist of the crew. What I'm showing off here is the Deep Sea one. That's technically what we're reviewing here. The In Space, the Quest for Planet 9 one is pretty much the same. The real big difference is going to be these gold cards. In the original one, which our group actually did have and played, it just apparently has disappeared by the time I wanted to record this review, and I'm sure it will pop up as soon as I upload this video. The goals did not have differentiations for player counts. Instead, it really just focused on capturing a specific card. So the difficulty listed in the logbook was more about making sure there are a number of cards out, who can capture what. This one really focuses in on having a bit of a variety. Both have some other rules that can come up in here, but honestly, when playing at least this version, it just seemed a lot easier and fun to just say, all right, we're going to choose a skill value of 10 because to see what's going on. Because you have such a huge deck that can randomly change, and sometimes you might not use this card because, you've already hit that max at the bottom. Rarely do you see same goals, or they're going to be mixed up and with different player counts. So each game feels much more different. Going back to the original Crew game, it was extremely popular when it first came out. Everyone loved it. It was nominated and did win a Kenner Spiel for, I believe, 2020, even though I think technically 2019 was its release date. I think it's going to be a little bit weird there depending on localization. When we played it, however, I was not nearly impressed. Honestly, after playing a few rounds, I sort of got bored, and it wasn't a game I was excited to see hit the table if I was there. That said, this one, these changes in these goals, whatever it is, this clicked so much more for me. I think it's because the original one it just had a basic number, and I was just focusing on if I had the card they needed, giving it to them or not playing high enough. This one, I have to be a bit more almost multitasking. I have to make sure that this player wants to make sure they get more greens. I may still just want a 9, just like the original old goals. While this player over here wants to make sure they win a specific trick, maybe like the third trick in the game. So I have to task manage a bit more. And because of that, I think I'm actually more involved in the game, even though we're not discussing things. And because of that, I'm thinking more. I'm thinking what other people are doing, and my hand feels less dead or dead weight, so to speak, even when I complete my own goals. Yes, that's sure to happen hypothetically, usually at the lower task levels where there's only 3 goals out. You could just be like, well, I finished my task, and it'd be very hard for me to screw up your task. I just need to not play a 9 maybe at a specific time. At the higher level counts of this, obviously that's not going to be an issue. Because there's variety in there, especially because there are also more bounds for player counts, it just feels like I am participating more within the game. Honestly, I will say I do feel this one is much more appropriate for the Kenner Spiel, as these goals are a bit more complicated, and I can see them tripping up. Hell, they tripped up some of the people I play with still who have played a game or two before, just because you make a small mistake. But it's still one that I think keeps its simplicity, and the complexity comes a bit more from interacting with the people at the table. Now, was this enough to make it so I love it, put it on my top 10s? I don't think so. But unlike the original one, I will say if someone asked to play this version of the Crew, I'd be more than happy to sit down at the table with them. Crits and misses for the Crew. Mission Deep Sea. Crits. The new stack of gold cards are an extreme improvement over the original Crew game. Not only is there a larger variety of different kinds of goals to complete, but the backside is designed such that there should be more balance for different player counts. These goals are designed so you shouldn't feel as punished if you want to play with 5 people versus with 3. While the goals are more complicated, in the end, it still keeps all of its simplicity and the positive qualities from the previous edition. This makes it feel like an honest improvement over the game, not just a reskin where they used a different theme. Misses. Randomness can be cruel sometimes in this game. Your starting hand, as well as which goals come out, can make it a real uphill battle for you, making it almost nearly impossible without having a very coordinated group. On the flip side, sometimes you can have a hand that's very easy to complete your own goal and doesn't hurt the other players too much, meaning you're not really caring on which cards you actually play. One of the reasons I wanted to make this review was just show how a small change can make such a big impact. The original Crew, I just wasn't a fan of. I don't think it's because of mechanics. Non-communicating, I happen to really love. Hanabi and Faraway, both games where that is a core mechanic, are games that I adore and frankly highly suggest you check out if you haven't already. As for trick-taking, while I'm not as versed in it compared to many of the other trick-taking games out there, I have enjoyed Fox in the Woods, and I have played probably way too much Hearts as a kid. It's just something I just couldn't get interested in the original one, and I was bored after a few rounds. This one giving different tasks that have different objectives, something just kept me engaged. And I was actually starting to feel the same feelings of those who are in love with this game. It's still not enough to make it probably the top game I would ever always want to play. The first small light game I'm going to go and grab. But this version to me is 100% replacement for the original. Unfortunately, because the original was so popular, a lot of people probably already have that. And it's very hard for me to suggest buying this one over that because they are the same game. Unless you didn't like the first one, I would say then this might be, just like me, the thing that maybe makes you change your tune. If you don't have either, absolutely buy this one, no question. I think, honestly, this probably could have been sold as a mini expansion, and because the crew did so well amongst board gamers, no one would probably question it. But that's not usually a good thing to do for a small game like this. I don't know about this one, but I'm pretty sure the original one was being sold in big box stores. And this, like I said, this is a game that could, I think, appeal to a larger market. It is not niche. This is the kind of game you can play rounds back to back. This version made me think a bit more about not simply just making sure someone got a card, but how to maybe play my cards 3 turns in advance to either make sure that I'm leading when I should be, when they're leading because they need to gain a specific trick. And that was enough for me. I'm really happy that even with the success of the original crew, that they looked at their game and asked, what are some changes that we can make to actually improve upon it? That is important for the people like me who maybe weren't nearly as receptive to the original. It shows that you are listening and still fine-tweaking your game, and it's something that, of course, I'd like to see from plenty of other designers. Now, if you're a larger game, though, I would hope you do maybe a bit more of an expansion or if there's an errata. But for something as small and simple as this, I do think the right move was to publish a new version. Even if you have the old one, this one shouldn't be too hard to get. If you don't have either, I cannot recommend any other one but this version. You can let me know if you have both of them. Do you prefer one over the other? And if you were like me, was this enough to change your mind? Or were you still not as, and maybe you're not as big on trick taking or cooperative games, and that is really the hump that you can't get over for this? I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. Once again, thank you so much for reaching this point. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, if you think someone is interested in this game and somehow has not heard of it, please send this video to them. Until then, I'm Will, and this has been Roll for Crit.